Okay, guys, here's where we were last time.
Didn't have volume the last meeting.
Around November, Windows did an update. And the audio sometimes comes and goes. I can't change it. I don't know what the issue is. Guys, I'm just going to shut down the test machine. I don't need it anymore. But here's what we did last time. We've installed and configured the WDS server. We created a user account called Join Domain, and we locked that user account down with a group policy. And then we did a test deployment of a machine. We were able to boot up off the network, load the boot WIM into memory, and then do an actual installation manually. Nothing was automated so far. Now we're going to do 2 more steps. I'm going to sign into my WDS. I'm going to go to the C drive. And I'm going to go to the remote install folder.
Are you recording this one?
I am. Guys, I didn't know the sound wasn't recorded, but I'm going to do it again for the review, so I'll have a recording. Plus, there's probably other versions from previous years that I've done. I'm going to go to Properties, and under the Security tab, I'm going to click Edit and add Join Domain. And I'm going to give that user modify rights. So go to the C drive, right click it, go to Properties, click on the Security tab, and click Edit, and add Join Domain. Right click, Properties, Security tab, Edit, add, Join Domain. Close that. Right click, remote install, go to Properties, Security tab. Sorry, add. Join Domain. Okay. So I'm going to click OK. Then I'm going to go to the Sharing tab and Advanced Sharing. Then Permissions.
Professor.
There are 2 sets of permissions. Click Edit, Add, click Join Domain. Click OK. Did you create a user account called Join Domain from the last? Okay, go back to here. Go back to WDS. Press cancel. Check name. So press cancel. Advance. Find now. Let's see what we call it. No, just choose it. Click OK. No, click over here. And I want to choose. Okay. Modify. Click that. Okay, modify. Click OK. Guys, we have two sets of permissions. I don't want to do this in this class, but I want us to do security permissions, not shared permissions. So if I remove all these accounts and then add everyone, what you make sure they, I'm going to press cancel. You stay right where you're at. After I'm done with the security tab, I'm going to go to the sharing tab. I'm going to go to advanced sharing. Then I'm going to click permissions. Then I'm going to remove the share permissions. I'm going to remove everyone. Then I'm going to add everyone full control. Type everyone. Click OK. Full control. These permissions were designed by IBM back in the 80s and 90s. They're really not relevant today. So we have two sets of permissions. Shared permissions are only affected over the network. Security permissions are effective over the network or locally. So by doing everyone full control, and all these permissions are like locks. I don't want to have two sets of locks. So by giving everyone full control here, it effectively disables this lock. This lock will never have any effect on anything. The only lock we'll use are the security permissions. So we're going to click OK. OK, and close. So all we did was we took that user account and granted that user account, join domain, access, modified rights to the remote install folder.
Should we have just done what you did?
Yes.
Okay.
You probably will type something right now. Go down and find out. Did you read it last time?
I was, but I don't have issues.
Okay. Scroll up. Oh, your VC is on. Connect to the starter. I removed everyone else, no permissions. I got rid of everyone but join domain. Add. No, I'm sorry, not join domain.
Yeah.
Everything. Permissions, go to permissions.
Was it here or on the other tab?
The other tab for join domain here is everything. You didn't like the, add it. Add join domain. Okay, sign in. Backslash administrator.
What's the question?
Okay, I'll give you a thing to add. Typing password.
Just want to make sure I have it on my.
No, we're good one. Move all those. Okay, add. rather than just put everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so, tools, active directory users.
We have some really, we do control to
So guys, next, everyone, go to your domain controller. Minimize that and sign into your domain controller.
That's the DNS, right?
Join. Yes, that's the DNS tab.
Not type in the name one word. Go to the next. Uncheck the box, type the password first.
Then stay right there for a minute. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this and go to the DC. I'm going to go to Tools, Active Directory Users and Computers. We've got to come back and fix something else. So guys, every time when you join a computer to the domain, what are you doing? You're literally creating a computer account on the DC. Those accounts are default to this computer container. So we want to allow join domain to have control over this container. So I'm going to right click, computers. I'm going to do delegate control. Click next. I'm going to add join domain, whatever name you used. If you put a space in it, you got to put a space in there. Okay, we're going to click.
Is that how you've been saying it the whole time?
Next, we're going to create a custom task. This folder and every subfolder, we're going to do full control. Then finish.
What did we do in the tasks to delegate? Or are we just checking them all off?
Do a custom task.
Custom tasks.
This folder and every folder under it. Next.
Full control.
Full control. Next. And then finish. So basically, guys, we created a user account on the domain called join domain. We locked that user account down so it can't sign into any machine other than the WDS. We also, in the group policy, allowed it to join machines, unlimited joins to the domain. When a computer is joined to the domain, you actually create an account, by default in this folder. So we allowed joint domain full control over this container. I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to go back to the WDS. When we installed WDS, it created this folder, and when we uploaded images to it, this is where it saved those images. So we gave modify rights to this folder to join domain. The last thing we need to do for join domain was make him a local admin. We don't want to make join domain a domain admin because then he can make changes to any computer. I just want him to be able to have full control over the computer he's sitting at. So I'm going to right click the start menu and go to computer management. I'm on the WDS. I'm going to expand local users and groups, and I'm going into the administrators group because I have two administrators. I have a domain admin, so anyone that's in the domain admins group is a domain admin. If anyone is in this local admin group, they're a local admin just to this machine. So I'm going to go to properties. I'm going to add join domain. Click OK. Click OK. Now give me 1 minute, let me catch someone else up. Okay, so guys, we had our DC created with the script because you don't know how to do that yet. We installed WDS and DHCP. We configured our DHCP server first, authorized it and configured it. Then we configured WDS. It crashed. It always crashes. I don't know why. We manually added boot images and install images. Then we went and created our joint domain account, locked it down with the group policy, gave the joint domain account full control over the computer container. We gave joint domain modify rights to the remote install folder. We also made joint domain a local admin. That's all the easy stuff. I kid you not. The next stage is we have to create these two files with this utility. Okay? During the day of the test, if I tell you to create these, I'm just going to get disastrous results, and you're just going to kill a lot of time. So on the day of the test, I'm not going to have you do these. I put these files on D2L so you can just download them. But on the lab, I'm going to show you how to create these. It's a convoluted process. But on the test, you're not going to be required to create these. Everything else we've done so far, you are going to have to do that and more on the day of the test. Remember, this is really the first lab that we're doing. You need to get in room 128 and start practicing. Some people have moved in. He's there all the time now. So that's the only way you're going to get this, is to get in there, get your hands on the keyboard and practice. So I can create these answer files on any machine I want. I don't have to be on the WDS. I can go to my Windows box and create these files and upload them to the WDS. Just to simplify things, I'm actually going to create these on the WDS, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm going to go in to Google. Guys, I'm just going to set this to the default so I don't keep getting prompted. And I'm going to search for ADK for Windows 10. Every time they release a new version of Windows, 1803, 1903, 1706, whatever, they release a new ADK. And every time they release a new ADK, they introduce more problems. So, like if you download this version, it's not going to work on this machine because it only apparently works well on 32-bit machines. So I'm going to go back to an older version of the ADK that I know works. So I'm going to click on this link, I believe. Then I'm going to go down here. And the one I want is ADK for Windows 10 1607. Every semester, some student will say, oh no, I'm going to try the new one. It'll work. It never works. I know this works. I don't have issues. Some people say, well, I got it to work after I did all these steps. I don't care. I don't have to do all those steps here. So I'm going to click on it. 1607, open it up and do the installation. It's going to download, this is installer, it's just really a download button. It's going to go download a bunch of software off the internet. If you're going to do this to a bunch of machines and you wanted to install this on a bunch of machines, what I might do is say, go to one machine, do this, download all the files, then at that point you can just go to each machine and just use those files, put them on a network share or something. So you don't download them every single time. For right now, I'm just going to download them directly from the internet. Click next. It's going to send information back to Microsoft, that's fine. They're going to want your firstborn, give it to them. They're always trouble anyways. This tool is a bunch of things. The only thing that I need is the deployment tools. The deployment tools is that DISM utility. It's tools to create custom WinPE disks and things like that. It's a whole bunch of tools, including a system manager that's used to create answer files. And the actual WinPE disk that you want to download so you can have something to start with. User state migration tools. That's something that you'll see all the time. When you're deploying images, say I'm deploying a Windows 10 box, and currently the user has a Windows 7 box. So I would install this software, and using this software, I would connect to that Windows 7 box, take all their settings, all their applications they have, all their documents, upload it to a network share, deploy Windows 10, and reconnect to this and copy it back to the machine. Nice. There's a lot of third-party tools that do this. This one is one. It can also be integrated with Windows Deployment Toolkit. You want to, instead of using the WDS like we're using, you got a simpler version of it called Windows Deployment Toolkit that allows you to avoid creating answer files and just do simple deployments. And it also works with WDS and SCCM. I'm not going to go into SCCM right now. This tool right here is a piece of software that lets you stream apps. Give me different ways you can install software in a network type environment. Old school sneaker net, walk around with a CD or download something independently on every machine and install it. Or I could push out software through a group policy. If I wanted AutoCAD on all these machines, I could just create a group policy, find the AutoCAD package, say install AutoCAD, here's all the options that I want, and you install it. The third way would be remote desktop. Basically, I can then create a remote desktop server, install some apps there, and then create a group policy or remote desktop infrastructure and put links in everyone's start menu. So when they click on a link to run Office, that's not installed locally, it's installed on the remote desktop machine, it'll do a remote desktop to the server and launch that application locally. So it's only installed on the server. Then the last is virtualization. It's called AppD. Provide a desktop infrastructure. Let's say I have 35 licenses for AutoCAD. And those AutoCAD people move around a lot. So I can't install AutoCAD on every box, because if I install it, I would violate our license agreement. So what I can do is convert that app from a standard app to a streaming app. And basically when a user clicks on an app to run it, it doesn't run it, it just streams it from another server. So it looks like it's installed locally, but it's really not. So when they click to launch it, it will download most of the stuff and keep it in memory. And when they close the app and shut down that machine, the app's no longer there. So if whenever you create a policy, whenever you sit down on a machine, in your start menu, add that streaming app, you launch it, it'll stream it from the server. When you close it down, it'll delete everything locally. So that's a pretty cool tool if you're using a desktop infrastructure. Microsoft, I just read, is trying to get rid of this. What they're doing now is you sign into a machine, you create a virtual hard disk and you install an app on a virtual hard disk. And that virtual hard disk is somewhere on the network. So when you log in, it takes that virtual disk with the app installed on it and mounts it to your computer. And when you click to launch it, it launches it from the virtual disk that's on your network. And when you shut down your machine, it unmounts the disk. And a bunch of people can mount the disk at the same time. So that's the way they're going they're trying to, I guess, get rid of this. I don't know, this has been around for a while, so I don't know if they're going to get rid of it right away. But that's one thing they're doing. This is another tool to turn roaming profiles into roaming disks. Right now, you have this concept of a roaming profile. So in your account, under the profile tab in Active Directory users and computers, you have a roaming profile field, and you put in where the network share where your profile is stored. Every time you log in, it'll download your profile, cache it locally, you use it locally. When you're done, it uploads any changes that you made to your roaming profile. The problem is, everyone who gets in at 9 o'clock, they log in, you have this something called a login storm where everyone's trying to download the roaming profile. And people put things in their roaming profile like ISOs. If you have an ISO that's 4 gigs in your downloads folder or your documents folder, every morning when you log in, it's going to download that from the server. So it's going to have a negative impact on your network. So Microsoft is now doing something called profile disk. It's going to be the same concept of those application disks. You're going to create a virtual hard disk and store people's profile on the hard disk. And what's going to happen is, when you sign in, it's going to mount that hard disk to your computer, you're going to use it, and when you're done, you're going to disconnect it. So it's always going to be on the network. The problem is, what if you sign into 2 computers at the same time? It's not going to be able to mount that disk for your account at the same time. So Microsoft has something called user experience virtualization. And basically, it's going to be like Dropbox. You make a change to one profile disk, it'll sync it to your other profile disk that you log into. So that's what that does. You have this Windows assessment service. Like if you want to deploy Windows 10, and if you don't know if that machine can handle it, or the software that's currently installed or is compatible with Windows 10, that's what that does. Volume management, if you want to activate a bunch of machines at one time, there's better ways to do that. This allows you to create custom CDs that you can boot a machine to and do all the stuff from. Designer allow you to design images that you want to install. So it does a lot of things. For this lab, we only need these 2. If you install everything, it's just going to take a long time. I'm just trying to avoid, we don't want to download 75 gig, we don't want to download, I don't know how many gigs it is if I download everything. 7 gigs. So we're just going to cut it down to 3.4 gigs. Then click install. It can be pretty big, guys. If you're on a slow network, it can take a long time to download. That's why I say, remember that first screen, it says download it ahead of time, put it on network share. So if you use this a lot on a bunch of different machines, download it once, so you don't have to keep downloading every time you install it. Okay, guys, this is going to take a few minutes. There's a glitch in Windows 19. I think it's a 19 issue, not a WDK issue. It just doesn't work. I can't get it to launch. Then you have to remove it, reinstall it. So 1 or 2 of you might have that issue. Take your first break now. Let's keep it around 10 minutes. This should be done by then.
access. We want to give that user full control of this modem and everything. You were in policy, you should have been access to users. These steps. Last class. And all of this is just saying it's he complained for where he got buffed for he actually was playing with it. Yeah, she's close. Okay, who's this? I think like that. That's like surgery that I think better with the press.
I mean, I kept off, yeah, pretty much. Once we got to this, we want us to call me as well.
Go to all tasks.
delegate control. That's what you're saying, that's what we started. But, and then we had kind of one with the, now here's what we have to do.
Don't remember it. I'm pretty sure I remember it in the last class. Kind of helps.
Just what's your bad place?
Yeah, it's a new character. Just came out yesterday.
You're so glad without a server. Install,
Yeah. He said create a custom.
Click close. Okay, so we've downloaded and installed ADK for Windows 10. You can use this to create answer files for Windows 10, Windows 7, all the way back through Vista. We need the boot WIM and the install WIM copied to a writable location. Right now, we can't write to a DVD. So we're going to go to the DVD. We're going to go to the sources directory, and we're going to filter out everything but WIM.
Sources, right?
Go to sources, and in the top right-hand search box, do WIM, highlight install WIM and boot WIM, and copy it. And then paste it inside documents. Now the goal is we're going to use those images in WDK to create these answer files. So when we deploy an image, we don't have to manually go to each machine and answer, putting in the password, accepting the end user license agreement, joining it to the domain, all that. We want that to be automatic. When we deploy an image, we want something called light touch, where we have to do minimal things to the machine. So once you're done, in your documents folder, you should have something like that.
After I need to highlight everyone and
Just boot WIM and install WIM, right click it, copy it, then paste it under documents.
boot will install it.
Boot WIM and install WIM. Look right up here. I need these two inside of documents.
No, I do it. I'm like, don't try to write the source.
So, okay, good. Now go and do.
Sources.
Whenever you copy anything off a DVD, it checks a box. I need you to right click install WIM inside of documents, go to properties, and unselect read only. We need these files to be writable.
Do the same with boot.
And do the same with boot. You good, Ray?
Yes.
What do we do with capture? Do we do anything?
No, that was from the earlier lab when we added the images initially, then created a capture image.
Need to be read only.
Unselect read only. Uncheck it.
Do the same thing with the form.
Okay, so once we're done with that, we can go to the start menu. We installed two things. We installed a bunch of things, but the two ones that are actually launchable, Windows System Image Manager and Deployment and Imaging Tools. Basically, this loads a command prompt and puts you in the right directory. That's all it really does. That's all the tools in it. What we want to do is this. That's used to create answer files. I told you last time we meet, those desktop admin guys, they know this utility inside and out because those are the guys that are creating the answer files, deploying those images, and that is a big part of a corporation. I don't care how good your network is, the desktop image is the most important thing to the end user. So we're going to right click down here. So we need to select the operating system we want to create an answer file for. So we want to create an answer file for Windows Server. If we wanted to create an answer file for Windows 10, we would have downloaded the install WIM and boot WIM off the Windows 10 DVD. But we're going to do it for Windows Server. Same concept. Select an image, a Windows image, choose install WIM. Guys, in the past, 2008 server, 2012 days, if I didn't have the boot WIM in the same directory as the install WIM, I got an error. So ever since then, I've copied them both. You might not need the boot win, because we don't touch it, but I'm just trying to avoid that error that I got in the past. So highlight install, click open, and we're going to do an answer file for server standard with a desktop experience.
So just server standard on server
Right.
standard core?
Server standard is the desktop experience, server core is the one without graphic. Now, it needs to open that file up, that's where we had to unselect read only, and create a catalog of what's in that DVD, or what's in that scholarship. And what does that little shield indicate?
Admin.
Yeah, it's going to elevate me to an admin at this point. Right now I'm a normal user, it'll elevate me to an admin automatically. On Windows 10, if I was doing this from Windows 10, it might prompt me to hit yes. But Windows Server, it doesn't prompt you. If you get an error here, most likely you didn't unselect read only. Or you got a glitchy version of ADK. Go back to 1607. Guys, you remember when we did the installation? We did one part, set up all the partitions, it rebooted, and then we set our password, accepted the end user license agreement, and things like that. So there's two ways to do image. I could create a nice clean image by deploying an operating system, installing all the software, then embedding one answer file that handles both the first part and the second part in that image. The problem is, if I need to make a change, I have to rebuild the entire image to reinsert a new answer file. By using and we can use tools like DISM to deploy that image. By using WDS, we don't have to embed the answer file inside the image. When we deploy the image, we'll send the answer file out. If we want to make a change, we don't have to rebuild our golden image because the answer file is never embedded. Because there's a reboot in the middle, we have to create two answer files. Because if we send one and reboots it, it's only in memory, it would be erased. So then we have to send a second. So we're going to have to create two answer files. If you look in this folder, it's actually creating another file. It'll create another file in this folder once we're done. It's called a catalog file of what's in that image. You only have to do this once when you add a new image. Once that catalog file is there, it'll reuse it the next time you open this up. When this first came out, there was no books. So I had to learn this for the class, kind of like trial and error, to teach it. We're going to see a bunch of settings, thousands of settings. And if you highlight a setting, press F1, it gives great help. So that's how I learned it. I knew what question, I went through it and did an installation manually, and I remembered, I wrote down what questions it asked me. What's my partitioning scheme, my password, and I kind of made a note of every question that it asked me. And then I looked through all the settings and I found the settings that answered that question. Hit F1 for help, and it'll give you how to answer that particular question. I can't take an answer file for 32-bit Windows 10 and use it in server. I can't take an answer file from a 32-bit Windows 10 and use it in a 64-bit Windows 10. It just doesn't work, even though it's the same question. Because every time you add a setting, it creates like a GUID for that setting that's unique to that version of the operating system. Again, on the day of the test, you don't need to install ADK or create the answer files. You can just download them off a D2L. I have them in the same folder as PowerShell scripts. The glitch for 2019 is it almost gets to the end and then it crashes. That happens, uninstall ADK, reinstall it. Yeah, if you you'll know it's finished if you go to that folder and you have a catalog file, and this window goes away.
Cool.
Mine's finished. Is anyone else still doing? Well, I'm going to start explaining things because you're still halfway. Guys, I'm not going to go into the bottom thing, which is how to install packages. So when you deploy an image, you can deploy certain software packages at the same time. I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to worry about creating an image. Now you need to be very careful. They have WOW, which is for Itanium processors, and AMD 64-bit. We want to make sure that you choose the items from this AMD 64-bit. I'm going to right-click the answer file section and say New Answer File. Then do File, Save Answer File As, and I'm going to go to the remote install folder. If my WDS, does anyone know what the concept of gelling is? Basically, when I start a service on my computer, I'm going to gel it to a certain directory. I'm going to make it so that service thinks that folder is actually the C drive. So if that service gets hacked, they can't get back to the original C drive. They think they're in the C drive, but they're not. You're just kind of blocking that user account that service is running into that folder. So when we go into the folder and try to look for our answer files, we can't get to the C drive, the real C drive, because it's jailed off. So we got to put these answer files in here just so we can use them. This will be our working directory. The service thinks that's our C drive. So that's why I'm saving it in this directory. I'm going to call this Windows Server 2019 WinPE answer. Again, I need to save it in the remote install folder, just so WDS can see it. So I'm going to click save. When you guys call up, I'll come back there. Craig, are you there yet?
Yeah.
Okay. So, guys, do you remember for the first part of the installation, we're booting up to WinPE. After that part is done, it copies all the files over, installs the base OS, it reboots again, and then asks us additional questions. At that point, we're booting to Windows. So there are 7 stages to the installation. The WinPE stages first, and you go all the way down to OOBE system. What is OOBE?
Out of the box.
Out of the box experience. So we're mainly going to be dealing with WinPE specialized and OOB system layers. So we're going to start with the WinPE. That's the first part of the installation. When we boot it up off the network, it asks us to sign in, right? Because we needed to access the network share. So what we're going to do is look for, I want to make sure I'm on the right one. Guys, there's no way I'm going to remember this. You know how I'm remembering it? I'm reading an old answer file. So when I first started doing this, I downloaded an answer file off the internet, kind of looked at that, trying to find that component. So I'm just looking at an old answer file. So I don't think anyone is going to remember this. So I'm going to scroll down until I find a section called Microsoft Windows International Core WinPE. No, I'm sorry. Windows Setup, Windows Deployment Server, yes, so look for AMD 64 Microsoft Windows Setup. Expand that, then highlight Windows Deployment Services. Right-click it and add it to Pass 1. Make sure you're doing the AMD 64. So the first thing it asked us was to sign in. So I'm going to go down to Credentials and type Contoso, our password. Guys, when it saves it in the answer file, it's going to encrypt it. Not strong, but it is encrypted. It's not plain text. And the user account name we're going to use is join domain. Notice how the box goes from empty looking to full. You can't have any blank settings in an answer file. It won't accept it. So that's the very first thing it asked us was to supply credentials to download an image off the WDS. Do you want me to come back? You want me to come back? Okay.
Oh, is the username Contoso or Jonathan?
The domain is Contoso, the password is capital PA11WRD, and the username is join domain.
Oh.
Listen, didn't you have a typo with your join domain? I thought all I know was her having a typo. You use whatever name you use. If you had a space, you put a space in. The other thing it asked us, once we signed in, was which image did we want to install? So I'm going to go to Server Manager, Tools, Windows Deployment Services. I want to drill down till I get to my installation images. That's what we chose to install. I want to go to Properties. Image group, then highlight the Windows Server 2019 Server Standard and go to Properties. Windows Deployment Services, Server, our server, install images, image groups, then highlight your server.
Looking at it, I was like, because I was looking at it, like, it's not right. It's like, okay, yeah, that's the new file. I was like, am I looking for you?
I'm literally just watching it because this could be so nice. You're so good.
Just we hadn't copied it. Remember, we had we're going to do this lab again. Okay. So guys, I'm going to highlight, this is kind of a nice little thing. I can actually highlight image group 1 and copy. Then go back to the System Manager, expand images, and under Install Images, image group name, paste it in. Okay, I'm going to go back to WDS. I'm going to copy the file name. Don't always assume it's going to be install WIM. It might be install 1 WIM or something like that. So under file name, I'm going to paste that. Now the image name, I can use the description or this top field. Copy it. And paste that under image name. Guys, if you need help with any one field, you can highlight it, press F1, and it gives you awesome help. That's called a CHIM file. CHM is the extension. Okay? Now it's going to ask us which disk to install it to. Does anyone know what number does this start at? Does it start at 0 or 1? 0. Disks are enumerated starting at 0. Partitions are enumerated starting at 1.
So it's 0, 1.
The first partition, because this is going to be generation 2 machine, if you look at any other videos on the web, they don't even go into how to do this. They only talk about generation 1 machines, because you have to go through a bunch of work to figure out the partitioning scheme for generation 2. In a generation 2, the first partition is that system EFI partition. You don't install that. That only is for your bootloader. So we want to install it for partition 2. The first partition will be the EFI system partition that holds your GUID partitioning table. It's called a GPT partition, GUID partitioning table. All the GUIDs for your hard disk are going to be stored there. Okay. The next thing it's going to ask us is to choose our installation language in boot PE. So I'm going to go to Microsoft Windows, International Core, WinPE, setup language. Again, make sure you're under AMD 64.
Then we pass the setup UI language to.
Only pass 1. That only works in pass 1. Add setting to pass 1 of the WinPE.
Okay.
So under setup UI language, it's asking you what language do you want to do the installation in? You know, the installation program is going to be in simplified Chinese. We're going to do it in English, US. Guys, I believe this is case sensitive, but I'm not sure. Did that copy over the image? Did he help you copy the image to start the process?
So it's
Okay.
It's EN-US?
EN-US is uppercase. Then I'm going to highlight the parent setting. And the input locale EN-US. Guys, I've had problems with this. If I put anything under layered drivers and I don't have any layered drivers, it gives an error, so I'm just going to skip it.
But you said you couldn't leave anything blank.
It'll erase it. Something in this setting is there. It's not completely empty.
Oh, okay.
You can't add a component and leave it empty. So we pretty much want to run WinPE in English.
Anyway.
Okay. After it asks us to sign in, select an image to install, what language we want to do the installation in, the next thing it asks us to partition our disk. We just click next and let it automatically partition. But we don't have that feature here. You have to manually spell out the partitions. Again, we don't have any, we didn't add any layer drivers, so we left that blank, it just gives an error. Okay, next thing I want to do is, I want to find, under Windows Setup, disk configuration, expand. Guys, I need to have two partitions. So I'm going to highlight the second create partition, and I have to pass 1. Then do it again, because I need to create two partitions.
So,
It's under Microsoft Windows Setup. You've already probably have it expanded, because that's where we found Windows Deployment Services. Drill down until you see Create Partition, not Create Partitions, and add Create Partition twice. Then expand Modify Partitions, then add Modify Partition twice. We need to create two partitions, then we need to format them. The next thing is, we're going to highlight disk, and we're going to deal with disk 0. This is going to be the partitioning scheme for disk 0. We only have one disk.
wait, are you create partition or?
Highlight disk,
Yes.
then click on disk ID, then type in 0. Guys, if you are perfect like me, and you only have to do this once, this next field isn't needed. But if you make a mistake and have to redo it again, we might need to wipe the disk to start cleaning. Because if we create a partition and try to redo another install, the old partitions will still be there. So we're going to drop down and wipe the disk so it's clean every time. Now listen, if I make a mistake and I want to get rid of this, I can't. You have to highlight here and revert change. So if you make a mistake in a drop down, it doesn't let you erase it. You have to right click the thing on the left to clear it. So for disk 0, we're going to wipe it before we start. Even if it's a brand new disk, it's still wipe it. There's nothing on it. So we're going to create partition. The first partition we're going to create, we're going to make it 150 gig. This is going to hold our GUID partitioning table. This will be the EFI system partition. Then we're going to go to Modify Partition, and for order 1, partition ID 1, we're going to format it FAT32. I just want to show you something. You can stay right here. If I right click here, go to Disk Management, I'm creating this. I'm making mine 150 gigs. Look, guys, I can't make changes to it. The system prevents you from making any changes to this partition. It's going to have a special GUID. When the computer sees that GUID, it doesn't give it a drive letter, it doesn't allow you to delete it, or anything. When you do a clean install off the DVD, it creates something called a recovery partition as well. There's a little boot limit in there so you can boot up and recover the computers. I'm not creating the recovery partition. I'm going to assume this is a corporate network and that you have other methods of recovery, like backups and things like that. So I'm not creating this recovery partition. I'm going to do our EFI system partition that is required for Generation 2 machines to boot, and then another partition to boot with the Windows actually installed. This is FAT32. So I don't need a drive letter, a label, anything like that. The type ID I don't need to add, because if I choose a Generation 2, if it chooses Generation 2, it automatically labels all new disks as EFI disks, which will cause us a problem on our next disk. For this one, you don't need to identify it as an EFI, it already is. That's the default on a GPT partition. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is create the other partition. The order is 2. I'm just going to use the rest of the disk.
So extend, sure.
Yeah, so I'm going to extend it to the end of the disk. So it's going to be the second one that I do, extend it to the end of the disk. The type will be a primary disk. Now I'm going to modify that partition. The order is going to be 2. I'm going to call the label as Windows. You can put system, whatever you normally see when you highlight your C drive. Let me see what this machine has. They just call it local disk. That's what I'm assigning right now. We can put that on if we want. What drive letter do we want to give it?
C.
A C drive.
C colon or just C?
Just C. It's a drop down. You can't type it.
I just did.
Oh, okay. Did it go like bold black?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Partition ID will be number 2. The other one is partition ID number 1. Now, if we didn't put a type ID in here, this was the confusing part. It took me a while to figure out. Every time you create a new partition on a Gen 2 machine that's a GPT disk, it assumes it's going to be an EFI partition. And I showed you that EFI partitions, you can't do anything to them. You can't format them, you can't assign them a drive letter, nothing. So what I want to do is open up PowerShell. No. And just type in disk part. It's a utility that we can use to partition disk from the command line. Then I'm going to type help set ID. One word. Set ID is one word. Help set ID. I'm going to scroll up here. If it's an EFI partition, that will be the GUID. If it's any other partition, I want to use this GUID. If it's assigned this GUID, you won't be able to mount it, you won't be able to change it, you won't be able to see it, nothing. Even in this part, anything with this GUID is cleared. You can't do anything in this part with it either. So you can either highlight this. Guys, incidentally, the example at the bottom is the same ID. So I'm going to hit enter to copy. I did the basic disk, basic data disk. That's where we're going to copy Windows to. Or the sample is the same one. The example at the bottom. Guys, you can highlight something, edit, and to copy it is just pressing the enter key. Get out of this now. Exit, exit, and for the type ID, paste it. Guys, make sure there's no space before or after.
I'm 155.2.
Yeah. Second.
After this, the installation starts, it copies everything that it needs to, installs the appropriate file, it's actually doing an imaging, and then it reboots the machine. So this answer file is done. Guys, we got to validate it right here. Validate it, you should get no errors or warnings. Then save it. Okay. So guys, we're going to do another test installation. We're going to make sure that we aren't prompted for anything up until the first reboot. So I'm going to minimize this. Sorry, minimize this. Go back to WDS. Then highlight the server.
Wait. Oh no.
That does not sound good.
What, all the 80K stuff, where would do that?
Where do we do what? Let me come back.
Okay. I did all the 80K stuff on the WPS.
Good, that's what I did too.
Okay.
So
So you
go
want us
there.
to go back to the ABS?
No, sorry. Go back to the WDS service. That's what.
Okay.
Okay. So guys, I'm going to go back to the WDS service on that machine. I'm going to highlight my server name, go to properties, then go to client, then go to the client tab. So whenever a 64-bit UEFI machine boots, I want to pass them this answer file.
Where are you?
Look, right here. You here?
Yeah.
Right click, go to properties. Then go to the client tab. So whenever a 64-bit Gen 2 machine boots up, send them this answer file. So when enable, my Pennsylvania accent comes out. Not unintended, unattended answer file. So x64, browse, where does it look? Remote install. So that's why I had you save it there. Now listen, if you make changes to this this is our working copy. So when I click on open, it's going to move it to, it's going to copy that to a different location. So if you make changes to it, you have to come back here and re-choose it. So if you have a typo or something, you have to re-choose this thing.
Where- can you choose-
I'm going to click open.
just
So I'm on your server. Right click. Properties. Client.
Client?
Yeah. Check. Browse. Scroll down. Choose the bottom. Okay. Okay, and that's where we're at. So I'm going to click OK. And we're going to do another test image. So I'm going to go back to my real machine, Hyper-V. New virtual machine. Test 02. Generation 2 machine.
Hyper-V, you got a test, right?
No, Hyper-V. Over here, new virtual machine.
New virtual machine, okay.
I'm going to call it test 2. Test 02. Gen 2. Because we're booting off the network, I want to give it 2 gigs of memory to boot up. Dynamic memory from that point on. I'm going to connect it to my private network.
It's generation 2, right?
Right. I'm going to create a blank disk. You want me to go back?
Sorry, one step forward.
Private.
Private?
Okay. Private. A blank disk. Install from a network-based installation server.
You like this now?
And then finish.
On the bottom, yes.
Guys, I'm going to connect to it first, then start it. Press enter to boot to the network server. And guys, it says request ID number 2. So I need to name and approve that back on the WDS, because I don't want installations to just, I'm waiting for more people to get caught up.
So you got WDS,
Pending devices, you might need to refresh.
device, 2, okay. Name and approve, right?
Yeah. No, we don't want to capture yet.
So your WDS virtual machine, and then you want to go to the Windows deployment services. Then, yeah.
Chris, can I go on? Can I go on? Do you want me to wait for you? Oh, okay, so I'm going to minimize this.
Pending devices.
I'm going to go back to my WDS. I'm going to go to pending devices. If you don't see it, hit refresh. So I have this pending device, request ID number 2. I'm going to do name and approve, and type in lowercase. Guys, this is going to be the name that will eventually be saved to the computer account. So you want to make sure it's lowercase. Sorry, 02, test 02. Next. Press cancel. Did anyone go through with it yet?
No.
Press cancel. I'm going to sign out.
You want us to sign it?
Yeah, sign out, and then sign in as joint domain.
I can't sign it.
Guys, I can't do the name and approve as admin because remember that issue with when it creates a computer account, it denies resetting it.
Okay, good. Well, listen, before I do the name and approve, I was signing this joint.
Guys, if we did this as the domain, if we did the name and approve as the domain admin or local admin, we would have, the computer account would be created by the administrator account, and to reset the password would be denied, so you couldn't reset the password. So the domain admin cannot join a computer to the domain. It gives you an error. You avoid that by typing join domain, and then our password. So we're going to name and approve as the joint domain account, not as the admin.
Okay, I go test 0.
So again, I'm signed in as joint domain account. I'm going to go to tools, WDS, and now I'm going to do the name and approve as joint domain. Test 02. And just walk through the wizard. Guys, I want to do something else, just to show you what happened. I'm going to connect to my DC. You don't need to do this. Here's my old account. If I go into test 01, and I go to advanced, who owns this?
The admin.
The domain admins group. Now if I go to test 02, go to security, advanced, who owns it?
Join domain.
That's the reason why we created and went through all that hassle of joint domain. If I go into here again and I look, domain admins, change password deny, reset password deny, join domain, none of that. Because join domain has full control. That's why we do it as join domain. Look at the error I got. Can anyone tell me what error this is? What you think the error could be? I'm going to close it. I'm going to go back to WDS. I want to show you the error that we caused. I know exactly what the issue is. I'm signed in as join domain. I'm going to go to Windows Kits. No, actually, I'm going to go back to domain admin, just to make it easy. I'm going to sign out, sign back in as domain admin. Guys, we have a problem with our answer file. I shouldn't have done this, but I did. I'm going to sign back in as domain admin.
I don't have the two options. Join domain here.
You got to do this, so go sign in as domain admin.
Yeah, it's already here.
Okay. I'm going to open up the system manager, and I'm going to open up my answer file.
What's the system manage?
Guys, change this to system. We cannot have a space in the label. So drill down till you get to modify partition 2, change the label to system, get rid of the space. That's the issue we have.
So here I am. Here's the.
Open up system manager. Start menu. It's very top.
I'm opening here.
Yeah.
Save it. I'm going to save the answer file after I make that change. Go back to WDS and re-import it. Go to modify partitions, modify partitions, order 2, go to label, change it to system.
So now,
I'm going to go into pending devices. That pre-save device. That's right now I just.
Are we good? Who needs me to come to that?
Nothing, I'm good, nothing you can fix, though. You need to.
So, you re-edited your answer file? Oh, double click. Okay, go. No, it's right here. Sorry. Okay, go to, change that to system. Yep.
Oh, hold on.
Save it?
Just change it to local. Is that okay?
No, that's just giving us the error.
System?
Yeah, so, save, right, back to WDS. It doesn't have to be lowercase, just put no spaces. Highlight. Right click. Properties. Client. Browse. Scroll down. Choose that image. Open. Click OK.
Okay. So guys, once you've updated this answer file, we need to go back to WDS. Guys, make sure you save it. Go back to WDS. Go to your server. Right-click the server. Go to Properties. Under the client, browse for the answer file again. Then click OK. Now here's the part you missed last time. Watch. Once you're done with that, we're going to right click and sign out. Sign in this time, but choose other user and type join domain.
So when you ask control, the other way should be.
Control end.
And join domain. No space. Just join.
I think on my end, which was space.
I think that mine is a different one.
And then that's right.
No, okay, so there's a space here.
Because we've already had the meeting once. Yeah, sign in as the user. And all of this. So, we're going to do that. Are you still signing in as the main admin?
Yes.
No. Two of those? Yes.
You got it.
We've got to re-add it as well. We'll just. Expand. Right click. Markers. Client. Browsing. Browser.
So we are,
Okay. Okay. Now log in as. So now I'm running this. So just open it into file. Maurice's running this. I didn't want to add overlay. It looks the same. Check you guys have to see.
What's your name there?
Just yeah, system. Okay. Save it. To sign back out. Oh no, I'm gonna go to the tool. The PDF. Server. Slide that.
How would it be in classes today? Do a lot of classes today?
Every time you make a change to the answer file, you have to go in and re-add it. Okay, hold on. Guys, let me start this, and then I'll come around to you. I'm just going to go back to my image, guys. I'm going to go back to test 2.
You did connect, right?
Right, it's already running, so I'm just going to reset it. Boot to the network and try again. Do that, guys. If I didn't do anything, in 28 seconds it would automatically choose setup. I'm going to hit enter. Let it do its thing. I'm going to come around and still help you.
Do this?
I have that too on the other one. I figured I'd just do something. Maybe I didn't because they're on the same thing. I imagine minimum is
Minimize this. Go back to test 2. So then go back to the VS. And minimize this. You want to the top one. Right click. And then approve. And we'll type in test 2.
That's from before, right? That was from before?
Yeah, just to,
Okay, so then maybe you just need to reset
for
it.
pretty simple.
Yeah, so yeah, you just need to reset it so it starts on your proper file.
So just, hold on. So just reset, or just turn off, or reset?
Reset.
Reset.
I still got the same thing, so it's I might have just missed something entirely in the answer
Okay, because you've already approved it, and now it's a pre-stage device, it's a known device at this point. Okay, so why is it prompting you for anything else? Okay, listen,
It's gonna stab me a little bit.
listen, you would have to
I don't know what it reminded me of, like that.
clear here, I can try to do that.
Or something.
Pre-stage it. Just want to scrape that through.
So it's still
You
gonna,
know,
yeah. But he went straight up here.
Okay, guys, I still have another typo somewhere. I gotta look at that. Guys, this is where we're ending.
Okay. So wait, hold on before we go.
Yes.
Is this correct?
Are we supposed to get the windows?
Are we supposed to get the window?
No. Okay, we're gonna start diagnosing this more next time we come here. Okay. Guys, I'm not sure why I'm getting this error, so we'll figure it out next time we meet. I'm gonna stop this recording.